without the waiting room. So hi everyone, my name is Angie Viscianen and I am the founder of Leg Up Legal. We provide a mentoring program that connects pre-law students to lawyers to learn a little bit more about the legal profession before they dive into law school. And we've been doing these Zoom meetups every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon Central Time to bring in lawyers and law school admissions consultants and LSAT coaches and all sorts of people to come talk to you guys about things that will hopefully help you with your legal career. And so I'm excited today to introduce to you Ali Assareh, and he's going to talk to you today about some really difficult topics. You know, some of the things, the challenges that you face in law school are going to be personal ones. They're not always going to be professional ones, and that could have a huge impact on your professional life. And so one of those things could be dealing with death or grief or some really difficult emotions. And so we want to give you some strategies on how to do that. So Ali, I'll let you take it away. And why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your law school journey and what you've been doing since then?
Sure. Thanks, Angie, for having me. And thanks for creating this space. Before I even start, I was thinking about this last night. Like, I just checked the stats and, you know, how many people have been affected by COVID in the US alone, like hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives or in hospital. And it's just every time like I open CNN or Fox News or any news channel, any channel for that matter, it's just mind-blowing to me that we don't even take a minute to talk about what that means or do a meditation or have a therapist on TV to talk about what that means. And we just pretend like it's not happening, even though it's really happening deeply in the background. So thank you for creating this space. And I'm so happy to be here. So my name is Ali Assareh. You did perfect pronunciation, Angie. I saw you looking at me for approval. It's fantastic. I've been out of law school for about 10 years now. I went to NYU for law school. Before that, I was at UC Berkeley in California, and I took 2 years off in between. So that's a topic we can talk about as well. And I worked at 2 different firms after law school. I was at Cravath in New York for the first 2 years, doing banking, M&A, transactional work, so business law, not litigation and going to court. And then I moved to San Francisco, which is home for me, and I worked at another law firm here on the same types of matters. And early last year, I went to Clorox, the world famous Clorox, as you put in your description, not knowing that COVID's going to happen, and all my friends were making fun of me. They're like, Ali, why are you going to a chemical company that makes chemicals in plastic bottles? I have a personal story with Clorox. It actually ties into our topic today. So I knew about them before and how wonderful the people were there. So I joined, and then COVID happened. So my life has taken a unexpectedly insane ride this year with all of that and dealing with the pandemic and putting products out while our own employees are getting sick. And how do you manage the tension between keeping your workers safe and trying to supply society with products that folks need every day for schools, for hospitals. So it's been, again, so many good things to talk about today. Another thing is, you never know where journeys will take you. You just keep moving forward, and unexpected things happen that completely change everything on you.
So tell me a little bit about law school itself. You know, I know you had some personal struggles while you were in law school. You know, we talked about them a little bit. So why don't you tell the students some of your journey?
Yeah, so I'll try to answer all these questions, Angie, today by bringing some of the topics that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
One, because it's true, and like you said in your intro, a lot of people will face these things in different points of their life. But 2 is because I feel lucky, because I think my law school experience was better because of the passing of my brother. So I will tell you the story there. I moved to the US. My dad was an expat, so I grew up all over the world, and then moved back to the US Bay Area, which is home, when I was 15. But my parents retired and went back to Iran, so they never moved here. I moved here with my brother, who was 10 years older than me, and he kind of raised me from 15 on. He's the one that helped me with my essay for UC Berkeley, you know, the typical immigrant experience of like helping me learn English, forcing me to watch Friends every day so my English gets better, helping me with essays. He's the one that put the idea of law school in my head. One day, just random day, I was like, you know what, you should be a lawyer. And that's the genesis of that idea. So super close with him. And for the 2 years that I took off between college and law school, my brother got diagnosed with leukemia. And I saw him go through bone marrow transplant and chemotherapy, various rounds of chemotherapy. And he also had a 1-year-old son at the time and a 1-year business that he had founded, selling organic baby clothing and toys actually in Berkeley, because when they were pregnant, they realized a lot of baby clothes have chemicals, harsh chemicals, like the wood paint is not good. So they couldn't find the products they wanted to buy for their child. So they were like, you know what, we'll just open our own business. So in the middle, yeah, it was great. In the middle of that, he got leukemia. It was Christmas of '07 actually. The Christmas Eve he was sick, and the Christmas Day we went in and news got dropped on us. He was 33 at the time, so super young.
Oh my goodness, so young.
Yeah, and so it was the hardest thing that I'd experienced up to that point in my life, just seeing him go through that. And I don't know if you or viewers have seen someone go through chemo, but the basic idea is you take the person as close to death as possible, because you're killing all the cells, good and bad, and then you bring them back, and you hope that when they come back, only the good cells start growing, not the cancer cells. So it was very difficult. And here, I'll share my first lesson from that was, I got into NYU and I got into Berkeley Law, and every force in my life was pushing me to stay in Berkeley, continue to be part of my brother's life, help him with his journey, help the child, he's 1 year old, help the business. My parents were pushing me, everyone was pushing me in that direction. I wanted to go to New York all my life. Like I had the dream, I was like, I want to go to big city in New York, I want to work on Wall Street, that's my dream. And that was the most agonizing decision up to that point in my life, trying to decide between the two. And I asked everyone for advice. Like everyone I knew, I called up, mentors, family members, friends. And at some point I started seeing patterns, which was everyone was giving me advice based on their own regrets and victories. So if when they were young, they didn't make a bold decision to leave their family, they would say, you should go to New York, like don't worry about it, and vice versa. And so I realized I have to make the decision. It's gonna be my decision. And I decided to go to New York, follow my dream. And my brother, he actually passed away the summer before I even left for law school. So that was the first big life lesson for me, which was if I had stayed for reasons that were not true to me, for other people's reasons, basically, it would have been for nothing. I would have spent 3 years in Berkeley, been unhappy, always regretted not going to New York. And the most beautiful is my brother sent me an email, which I've turned into a plaque. It's in my room. It's his final email to me a month before he passed. And it said, Ali, I just realized you're going to leave us very soon. I'll miss you and love you very much. I want you to know that you made the right decision. You've got to go and become your own man. Love, Human. P.S. Do not ever reply to this message in a true non-emotional Persian man style. So that always stayed with me. So then I started law school, and first semester of first year, I got my best grades that I ever got in my life. And I'm convinced 100% the reason was because I was sad, like I was depressed. So I had this perspective on life. So all my classmates were like doing study groups and reading secondary materials and primary materials and like just going crazy, trying to cram as much into their brain as possible. I was just kind of literally checked out. So I focused on just reading the textbook, just thinking about the big picture. My stress level was so low because I just experienced something so much tougher. So I always tell law students, you're all prospective law students, it's really good to have perspective. And that's why these topics are positive to me. So when I said my brother died, everyone was like, I'm sorry. That's the first reaction. I'm so sorry for your loss. That's fine. But actually, the perspective that I got from that and the ability to follow my dream and that last email from my brother, and then doing well in law school, like that's invaluable. That shaped me, shaped my life, my journey. So these are not just sad events. These are very liberating, perspective-giving events and we can talk about different aspects of that too.
And during the first semester, I know, you're very sad at that time. You're probably feeling a ton of emotions. Did it cause you to withdraw from everyone, or did you have a support system that you can rely on? Like, who was the main person that you talked to about all those feelings?
Yeah, so I wrote a piece. It's on my website. It's called On Death, and it's in 5 acts. So Act 1 is this question. So I will share that story with you. The summer before I left, so I was, like you said, depressed, kind of withdrawn. Um, the one thing when people are sad, one very natural thing is you feel guilty about being sad or about being down, or you feel like you're letting others down. So you're sad, then you build a layer of guilt on top of it. Then you have shame because you're like, oh, why am I like this? Like, people think I'm so weak. Why am I crying like out of nowhere? Which used to happen. I would just, washing my hands in the bathroom, like start crying, right? So I was kind of hungry for something to help me deal with that. And I was driving home one day. This is in El Cerrito, California. Remember, this is '09, so right around the '08, '09 financial crash. So I remember there was a huge explosion of cheap businesses to start. For example, judo studio, taekwondo, karate, because you just need a space and a mat and an instructor, and that's your capital investment. So there was a ton of new martial arts studios in the neighborhood. So I'm passing by, there's a judo studio with a big banner. It says, first lesson free, come inside. So I don't know what happened. I literally stopped the car, go in, they give you clothing, so you change into clothing. And they do this gimmicky thing, right? So the gimmicky thing is, it's your first lesson, they're trying to hook you. So they say, stand against the wall. So you stand against the wall. And then 4 judo masters, 4, come and push you into the wall. So one is pushing your left shoulder, one is pushing your right shoulder, one is pushing your left thigh, one is pushing your right thigh. And they say, try to break free. And you can't even move an inch. Like, you're using all of your power, but you don't even move. It's embarrassing. So they let you struggle for like 10 seconds, and you're like huffing and puffing and starting to sweat. And then they say, okay, let's just let go. Stop. So you stop. And then they say, now instead of trying to push back, just step to the side. So go perpendicular to the force. And they start pushing you. So you take a step, and then the 4 masters fall into the wall. Like, literally, they fall into the wall because you get out of it. And the point of the exercise, this is the point behind judo. I never went to any other lessons, so I got what I needed, which was, when there's massive force coming at you, like, you can't fight back against the force. You can't push back. What you do is you let it go through you. So that was such an aha moment for me, because I was like, oh my God, like, let's let it go through me. So I took the guilt and the shame away. So like, when I needed to cry, you just cry and you let it go through you, and then you're done. When you need to feel sad, like, don't feel bad about feeling sad. When you want to be in bed for a day, be in bed for a day. Listen to your body, listen to your soul. And once you start letting things go through you, then it's A, it goes through you, so you recover faster, and B, you connect with people more, actually, because, like, if you're crying in a group, in a study group, and maybe one of the 4 other study partners is attuned to these things, but that's enough, and they'll ask you what's wrong. You start talking. Before you know it, I promise you, if you share, before you know it, they'll be like, oh my God, my mom had the same exact cancer, I went through this. And before you know it, you just start meeting people, and everyone has a story. Like, everyone has a story and has hardships and has dealt with something. And whether it's a pet, it's a person, it's a loved one that died, it's a neighbor, it doesn't matter, because it's subjective. Like, you may be just as much affected with your pet dying than a brother. It doesn't matter. It's the pain that you connect on. So sharing more and letting it go through you are 2 great techniques.
Yeah. So what are some other resources that you've learned to use over time to help you process these difficult emotions?
Yeah, great question. So I'll give a law school advice, and then we'll build that up to the bigger advice. So law school advice is, there will come a time in you wanting to take the LSAT test for law school, for example, or when you finish law school, you want to take a course for the bar course, and they're expensive. Like, a good LSAT course, at the time I took it, it was a few $1,000s. Same with barbering course. It's probably even more expensive now. And you'll have that temptation to say, okay, I'll just study on my own. It's not worth $5,000 for Elsa. I'm sure I can study on my own. And one great advice that a mentor gave me once was, do not compare the cost of the class to zero, because the answer that way is always don't take it or don't do it or don't invest the money. You got to compare it to the enhanced earning potential for the duration of your career if you do better on this test or that test. So when you look at it that way, $4,000, but if you get a bigger score, you will make that times 5 in your first year of practice. Like, it's a complete no-brainer. So let's apply that to life. There are many opportunities for people. There is therapy, there is coaching, a business coach, personal coach. There's courses on leadership, on motivation. There's judo, all kinds of meditation, yoga studio, gym membership, all this stuff. Think about these things as investments in yourself, not as the cost versus zero cost. And so for me personally, going to therapy, and a whole bunch of stories around that too, but I've been going once a month for 6 years now, regularly, but really applying myself. And I have a great counselor, and he recommends books. I read books. We talk about it. It's not just going once a month. I really care about these things. And some of the lessons I've learned over the past 6 years, and there aren't many. They're big lessons I'm talking about, like life-changing lessons. Maybe there's 7 or 8. But being completely honest, I'll give up everything I have to keep these lessons, because just every day make me happier. It's just unbelievable what a difference it has made in my life.
So what are some of those lessons?
So a great one, I'll share the very first lesson I learned, and then one that involves some more about grief and death, which is on topic. The very first lesson I learned, and Angie, anyone who has been in a relationship will identify with this. So a typical relationship fight, whether it's with a partner, with a parent, is one person says something like, "Oh my God, why did you invite guests over tonight? The house is dirty." Or, why are we eating here? This table is dirty. And the other person's, like 99% of the time, the other person says, "Oh no, these are just my friends. Like, they don't care if the house is dirty. It's okay. Like, you're overreacting." Or, "No, the table is fine. Like, I cleaned it yesterday." What is that? That's not seeing or hearing what your partner or what your parent is saying, because they're saying, "I feel like the house is dirty and I'm embarrassed if your friends come in." You're denying that emotion. You're saying, no, like, my friends don't care. You're not really speaking to what they're asking. So my first lesson, and I remember when my counselor was talking about this, I wrote in my notebook, I was like, "Oh my God, feelings are facts. Feelings are facts." Feelings are not right or wrong. Like, it doesn't matter whether your partner is crazy for thinking the table is dirty. What matters is that they have this feeling. It's a fact. So you can deny it all you want, all your life, or you can acknowledge it. And like 99.9% of the time, if you just acknowledge it, you're done with the conversation. You say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry that you feel embarrassed that I invited my friends when the house is dirty. Can we help clean it together or something? Do you want me to postpone it?" They'll say, "No, it's okay," because you saw them in that moment. So that was the first lesson I learned. And then I'll share the last lesson, which just happened in February, which I think top 2 or 3 lessons in my life. And it has to do with forgiveness. So my dad, remember, is the expat guy. We lived all over the world. He's a very strong character, a typical Persian dad, very hardcore, never talked about emotions, always had that distance with him. I did. And there was bunch of things in childhood, normal. A lot of kids have grievances against their parents. "Why did you do this? Why did you do that?" And so my dad got Parkinson's last year, and we kind of knew that he's on his way out in the next couple of years. And so I'd asked my counselor, I said, "Hey, I really want to forgive my dad before he passes so we can spend some great time together." what are some good books, resources, and he recommended a book. I read it. It made sense on the surface, but I didn't get it, like in that level where you get it. I did some YouTube lectures. I watched YouTube lectures. It made sense. I didn't get it. I read some articles. It made sense. I didn't get it. And in February, my dad had like a really bad cold. It escalated. And before we knew it, he was in the hospital. And he was in the hospital for 6 days total until he passed. And it was on day 3 or 4, and he was already at this point kind of out of it. Maybe he wakes up for an hour a day, but he's mostly out on morphine. They stopped the food because they knew he has a few days. And again, Persian family, so at any point, I feel bad for the hospital. There was like 10 people in the room with big chairs, like Persian food, all kinds. It's a theater. This is February, so right around COVID hadn't really started yet. So one day, I don't know what happened. Everyone was kind of gone. It was just me and my dad in the hospital room, and we had this kind of alone moment. And I was standing by the foot of his bed, looking at him, and here he was, this like old, strong man, patriarch, like head of the family, and he was so skinny in a hospital gown with like nothing, just a gown, like not even his glasses, no ring, just a hospital gown on a man. And I don't know what hit me, Angie, but like in that moment, I forgave not just him, but I forgave like all of the world. Like I got forgiveness. It clicked. It was just, and I remember I literally stood taller. Like I realized I was standing like this my whole life. This like weight lifted. And I always say the next 2 days with my dad, like the next day, he had a really kind nurse. There's different nurses when you're in the hospital. Some care about their jobs more, some less. And this was a beautiful nurse, and she helped me together. She asked me if I want to be there to watch my dad. And I said, yeah. And so we kicked everyone out. It was me and her, and we like shaved my dad. We like washed his hair with a cloth. We washed all of his body with a cloth. And it took like 2 hours because you have to move him and stuff. And I felt so close to my dad, and I felt like I spent so much time with him. And I say, when he died, I wasn't just as close to him as I ever was in my life. I was as close to him as I always wanted to be. Like I reached that moment. And so the thing with forgiveness, I realized that the space that I had with my dad wasn't between us. It was really within me. Mm-hmm. And once I covered that gap, it didn't even matter that he was gone or he was not communicating. Like it didn't even matter. Once I covered that gap, I was here already. And so that was just life-changing experience for me. This 2020, I know it's a hard year for many. It's been the best year for me. And I think that had a lot to do with it. Just lifted that weight. And I just finished by saying this, which is more like actionable advice for all the students watching. The way I articulate it is everything is additive. So all these books I read that I thought I didn't get, all these articles I read that I thought I didn't get, all these counselor hours, all these talks, this very talk, these add up to a moment like that. And sometimes when you're in a meeting like this, like today you come and maybe you leave and you're like, that was a waste of time. I didn't learn anything. That's an okay attitude to have. But an alternative attitude to have is you're collecting these things within you, these tools, these thoughts, these viewpoints that other people have, these articulations, these words to explain concepts. And you never know. You have it now. It's like Tetris. Now you have this block and this block and this block and this block. And one day that last block may come and you clear the line. So think about next time you're at a meeting, anywhere where you feel like you're not learning anything, just try to reframe your mindset as everything is additive. This is additive to something.
Yeah. So I know that, mental health is a topic that was really taboo for a long time in the legal profession. People didn't want to talk about it. People didn't want to talk about people who had substance abuse issues, alcoholism, all sorts of struggles that they had. But I think it's becoming less taboo in the profession now. We're trying to tear down those walls and say, hey, this is a really stressful profession. You're going to go through some really tough times and you should be trying to seek help. What would you say to somebody who, feels like they're going through a really tough time, but they're afraid to seek help because they think it's going to impact their career, or they think that other people are going to look at them poorly?
Mm-hmm. Really good question. So I learned something from an awesome law student this year who was an intern at Clorox. Sophie Deary, if you're watching this, it had a great impact on my life. So Sophie and I were talking about these questions. Like Sophie has a fantastic story about her own life, hardships that she has experienced, and so I was encouraging Sophie to share more. I said, well, when you interview for a law firm, like share where you're from and share your background. And she, at some point, she asked me, okay, that's all fine, but would you share it if you were in an interview with a typical male, law firm partner? And I was like, actually, that's, I don't know if I would. So it got me thinking about that, right? And then we kept talking about it to find a solution to this dilemma. And I think where we arrived at, and we co-wrote something on LinkedIn, and I would love to do more on this topic with Sophie. Where we arrived at was a great place, I think, which is we all have burdens, right? And if you're like an immigrant or a minority, you have your personal burdens plus those burdens, but it doesn't matter. Even if you're not minority or white, whatever, it doesn't matter. Everyone has burdens. Everyone has things they're insecure about, body weight issues, mental health, whatever. The line that we came up with was turn burdens into leadership opportunities. So this is a great place where you can be a leader. And what do we mean by that? So I'm from Iran, right? Iran's all over the news, evil country, nuclear weapons, ayatollahs, mullahs, whatever. So I'm in a lot of settings and a lot of meetings where things come up and people don't even know how to talk about it. Like, so they don't talk about it, right? So I sound from Iran, like, oh, cool. So what about this other thing, right? And they're good people. They just literally don't know anything about it. And they're so scared they're going to say the wrong thing or offend me. And so that we end up not talking about it. And that could be similar with, mental health or abuse or any topic like that. But what I can do is I can take that burden of like having this elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about, and I am in best place. I am among everyone in that meeting. I am best positioned to talk about it because I know most about it. I can't offend myself. So I am a natural leader in that topic. So what I do is I slowly and gently, and again, leadership is about empathy. It's about thinking about other people's emotions too. So I may say, so in interviews, for example, I may say, instead of saying, in Iran, I went to school, I would say, oh, in middle school, I went to a really, really small school, and it was really interesting because there was only 10 students for the entire middle school. And then the person would say, oh my God, how's that possible? Like, why is such a small school? And I was like, well, actually, it was during the war in Iran, and this happened and that happened. And kind of, you start with something that's accessible to everyone, and then you frame the broader discussion around it. But now you're a leader on that topic, and you get them to be comfortable talking about something they weren't before. So you're adding to them. So every manager, every law firm partner, every person would appreciate you giving them those extra tools that they didn't have.
Nice. What would you suggest to people? Because I know some state bars still ask on the character and fitness application, they still ask about mental health issues, substance abuse issues or anything like that. If somebody has a mental health issue, what is your advice to them about, how they bring that up, on their application, or how they discuss that with bar examiners?
Yeah, let's reframe the question, because I don't like talking about mental health issues or like that, because there is no time. It's not like you have an issue and then you don't have an issue, or there's a point in your life where you have resolved all your issues. So the best, and so many people talk about it this way too, but the best way I think about it too is, it's like working out. We have heard this cliche many times, but really think about it. Let's think about it. There's no moment in your life when you're fit forever. Like there's no one goes to the gym like, okay, today I arrived at fitness. Like I'm done. I have no fitness issues. Like it's over. It's never like that. Joe Rogan has a great quote. He says, inspiration is a daily shower. So same way you have to shower every day to stay clean. And some days maybe you have to shower twice. And sometimes maybe you don't shower for a couple of days because you weren't so active. But it's a constant thing. And Joe Rogan, he's done amazing things in his life. So he was talking about how, like, every day he goes to the gym, he struggles. Like, he has the lazy thoughts. He's like, oh, I shouldn't go. Everyone has those. The point is, it's everyday work. It's work here, work there, going to therapy. If you come across an article on Facebook that looks interesting, you read it. If someone wants to talk about it, you talk about it. You kind of, every day, you stay at it. So I think the better way to think about it is everyone has mental health issues. I mean, how could you not? And everyone can deal with them using many, many different resources that are available. So sorry, should we, is your question about like some specific issue, like if you had an alcohol abuse problem or something, should you talk about
Well,
it?
if you're seeking therapy, for example,
Yeah.
do you have to bring that up in your character and fitness application, or how do you discuss it?
I did not bring it up. I mean, I don't have any like convictions or anything that you have to disclose. But maybe, okay, maybe let's make it broader of like, how do you talk about these things in those settings? Like if you're in an interview or you're on a panel or you're applying for the bar. And I think a great framing is don't lead with the problem, lead with the solution. So I would lead with, mental health is super important to me. It's something that's part of my daily life. I read books about it. I constantly work at it, and it has helped me solve A, B, and C. And so that way and this is similar in every interview. They ask you like, what's your biggest weakness? Like similar approach you can take to that question is, hey, here is what I've done to resolve X, because everyone has problems. Everyone has weaknesses. So don't do the lame thing of, my biggest weakness is I work too hard, or that's whatever. Do a genuine answer about how you manage that problem, quote unquote.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about how you've grown, I guess, your personal growth throughout your career. I think we always think about our career growth, what are the next things that you've achieved, but we don't always look inward and think about, what have we learned about ourselves over time, and what have we learned about our own values and beliefs and, interests and stuff. And I think that it's really important to take that time to self-reflect. So how do you find that time for reflection, and what have you learned about yourself throughout your career?
Yeah, great question. The first thing that comes to my mind is, I think this is my new advice to everyone. So I'm 35 now, and this is the first year in my life ever that I feel confident in my personhood and my abilities. I don't second guess myself. And it has changed my life. Like every aspect of my life is completely different because that attitude shift happened. And again, I believe it's because of all these years of reading about this or that and doing the work at it. So seeing how that has impacted my life, I encourage everyone to do these things earlier, because I'm like, oh my God, if 10 years ago I had this confidence, like that would be amazing. I'm so glad I have it now. But I didn't realize what a life-changing, monumental thing that is. So
where did it take you to find that confidence, though? Like, how did you find it?
I wish I knew the answer. I think one big reason is community and work, specifically work community. So I changed jobs last year, and this year it's really the first time in my life where my work is a Clorox, shout out to Clorox. My workmates they support me in my endeavors. So all this stuff, this talk today that I'm doing, they're excited about it. They're like passing it along internally. You know, all the other stuff I'm doing, they promote it. They put me in touch with different orgs that I can talk to about these things. So I love that they are like, once you have people cheering you on, you just it just energy builds on energy, builds on energy, builds on energy. And I didn't have that, or maybe I wasn't doing it right. So up to this year in my life, I always tried to keep work and life separate. And this is great. We arrived at this great nugget of insight that I think is important. When you first start your career, especially as a lawyer, especially if you go to a big law firm, the dominant thought is keep work and life separate. So people have two phones. A lot of people have two phones: a work phone and a personal phone. And you log off and you go home and you don't do anything. Or the best case scenario is on the weekend you don't do any work. And I had a friend who once talked to me about it, and his take was, oh, like the sooner you integrate them, the more free time you will have. And this was the example. For example, maybe if you send an email on a Sunday morning on a weekend that you're supposed to be resting, that like frees up 4 hours of your time on Monday or Tuesday. So it's kind of an arbitrary rule that you put on yourself. It's arbitrary boundaries you create. And that limits your growth because you're always trying to stay with the boundary. And it took me being in an environment where there are no boundaries like that to see the synergies. So I love doing this. My work promotes it. They connect me with other people to do it. I come here and talk about Clorox. Like Clorox benefits from it. I benefit from it. And the two are moving in the same direction. And it's wonderful. It doesn't even feel like work. I'm working right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is really hard because when you're a young lawyer, you're not really sure exactly where those boundaries should be. And I think that you're trying to decide, for yourself, like how much do I want to work in my life? How much time do I want to keep for myself? And those lines get blurred all the time. You're always feeling like you're compromising your time in some ways. That can be really, really difficult to figure out what's the right balance for you and how can you live your life in a way that aligns with what your own personal beliefs are and still get all your work done, right? So tell me a little bit about how you learned about Clorox. You mentioned that you knew a little bit about the company before you went there. So tell me how you knew about them.
Yeah, so the time between college and law school, the 2 years that I was off, I happened randomly, the law firm I was working at subleased half a floor in the Clorox building. And so I was working in the building, and that's when my brother was sick. And I was working at that law firm when my brother passed. And because the law firm was just half of the floor, we shared like kitchens, we shared bathrooms, conference rooms with the Clorox team. And so unbeknownst to me, the law firm people and the Clorox people got together and they created a sign-up sheet. And for 2 weeks after my brother passed, every single night, a different person would drop off a full meal at our house and then pick up the Tupperware from the night before, so we didn't have to wash stuff. And I just remember I was like a young kid, so my first thought was like, oh my God, like why don't these people leave me alone? I'm grieving, like we don't need this extra headache. But when something like that happens, especially with the baby and the business and people come visiting, I literally remember there would be nights where like it's 11 p.m. and you're like, I'm so hungry, I haven't eaten. And you go open the fridge and there's like a giant spaghetti meatballs in a Tupperware in front of you. And you don't even have to wash it. You just eat it and leave it in the bag. And so that always stayed with me and something I never forgot. So when Clorox had an opening last year, I was like, I'm jumping in.
Oh, that's so nice. Oh my goodness. I mean, I can't believe that people would be so thoughtful to do that. I mean, I know that must have been a really, really tough time for you. So, for people who are having difficulty kind of processing their emotions, if they are grieving right now due to a family member passing from COVID or from anything else, really, what advice do you have for them?
So let's talk 2 minutes about philosophy, because a lot of this mental health stuff is amorphous for a lot of people. So some people get turned off because it's like loosey goosey and it's about the mind and not about hard science. So let's connect the dots. So I was lucky in my life. I randomly I was a philosophy undergrad major at Berkeley, and randomly took a class on Heidegger, who writes a lot about death and life. They're the same thing for him. With the last living surviving student of Heidegger, who was this 80-year-old man at Berkeley, Hubert Dreyfus. He taught this course, and it was life-changing for me. He was a fantastic teacher. I remember every day he would come to class and he'd say, that's how every class started. And he studied under Heidegger, and he was teaching this class for like 60 years now. He comes to class and he says, oh my God, I was interpreting this, this paragraph this way for 40 years. And one of you came to my office hours last weekend. Boy, was I wrong. Everything was wrong. Like, I need to redo it. And I was just like, this guy is studying the book with us. Like, what a great teacher. We were all in this together. And so Heidegger has this great book, Being in Time. It's unbelievably difficult to read, so I don't recommend you reading it. There's a ton of YouTube lectures on people talking about it that's much more accessible. But he has this beautiful image of a horizon of possibilities. So, and he uses the image, you're standing by like Grand Canyon. Imagine you're standing on Grand Canyon and there's the vast world in front of you. And these are moments for him when things like death happen, things like deep depression happen, things like anxiety is a big topic that he writes a lot about. And his idea is those moments are really hard, and we think of them as sad and loss. I'm sorry for your loss and grief, and it's all negative. He says it's true. It's all, there's that negative aspect. No one's denying that. But it's precisely in those moments of like deep change in your life, like you lost your parent, like that's huge, or you lost your brother, that's huge, or your dog that you loved for years, that's huge, or anything like that. You were abused, that's huge. You're depressed, that's huge. And it's in those moments that you're so unsettled, like nothing makes sense. You're alone on yourself on the edge of a cliff, right? You're looking down the cliff. And it's a horizon of possibilities. That's the moment where everything is fair game to rethink in your life. Everything. You're not going to work. It's not a 9-to-5 moment. You're not getting from A to B, one thing to another. You're completely unsettled, completely naked, completely exposed. And those are precisely the moments that you can ask yourself deep questions and make deep changes in your life, or deep decisions. That's why he uses the term horizons of possibilities. And so I encourage people who are going through these hard times to lean into it. That's a new term everyone talks about, but like, be sad. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing you should do. Be sad, be grieving, be crying, be thinking about all the memories you can't have with your parents and you wish you had. Be thinking about all those things and use that as a positive force that's the time to make deeper changes that you don't have time to make at other times. The second thing I would say that was really helpful to me, and I always tell my mom this. So my mom extra sad from my brother's passing. I've read about it. I don't know how it feels, but they say the loss of a child is like the deepest loss because it's contrary to nature. You're supposed to die before your child. So I say to my mom, again, this is from Heidegger, reading Heidegger, God, universe, whoever you believe in, whatever you believe in, Big Bang, God, universe, plans for us to spend 35 years with my brother. Okay? That was the time we were allotted. So it's completely arbitrary and random what order that happened in. Like, it could have been that you died the year he died, so that was your 35 years. Or it just happened that he died before you died, so that's your 35 years. So the day of the death is just an arbitrary day. It's just literally a day. It doesn't mean we ascribe all the stuff to it, but it doesn't mean anything. We had that a lot of time. It just happened to be in this order or this order or this order. And that's beautiful. That's so beautiful that we got to spend 35 years together. That's such a long time. That's amazing. So let's get out of the mindset of expecting more, putting more stuff on it. It's just, this is what we were allotted, and that day is just a day.
Yeah, that's a good thought to have. I think that when you're processing the thought of like losing somebody, people don't often think about all of the time that they actually got with that person and all of the amazing experiences that they got to have with that person. Just imagine if that person was never in your life at all, and what it would be like if they weren't a part of it. I think that it's really important to value the time that you had with whoever you've lost, and to process, how did they impact your life? What did they change about your life? And what can you take away from that experience of having that time with them that enriched your life?
Yeah, and they are not gone, and I'll explain scientifically why they're not gone. And this again comes from Heidegger's point. So Heidegger was a student of Schopenhauer, and Schopenhauer, they didn't coincide, but in terms of thought, Schopenhauer was the first Western philosopher to logically and scientifically, in the Western philosophy sense, and like premise, you have conclusion, to logically work Buddhism and really Eastern thoughts into Western philosophy. But the amazing thing I just learned this year, I did not know, when Schopenhauer wrote his ideas, he didn't know about Buddhism. He just arrived at it on his own. And then he went to China, and then he was like, oh my God, there's this whole like thousands of years on this thought. So then he studied Buddhism after he wrote his thoughts. But the basic idea of Schopenhauer and Heidegger is the oneness. Like, it starts with oneness, right? So Angie, you look in the corner of your room right now, like the top corner of your room, and you are as much there as you are here. It just happens that your eyes are located here, but like that's as much part of you as you. And so it starts with the oneness, and then we step back and we're like, okay, this is my body, and I'm sitting here, and I think I'm here. But that's step two. Step one is everything you see and feel is you, and then step two is you separate your body out. So that applies. So one good example to illustrate this, like if you ask someone, like, would you rather we cut off your thumb or like cut off your child's thumb, right? So most people would be like, my thumb. And so in what sense is your thumb more a part of your body than your child's thumb? Like, no, it's actually your child's thumb is more a part of your body than your thumb. So the basic idea again is it's oneness, and then we ascribe these other things secondarily, like this is me, this is my body. But that's step two. So same concept with time, and I use an example to illustrate this. So my dad was an expat, I mentioned. So he's died. He's been gone, quote unquote, for like 8 months. I just recently started working on some international projects for Clorox, and with expats, like people exactly like my dad, who go to different countries to start businesses, and they're around the same age that he was when I was a child and my dad was traveling, and they look this, they're also bald, and they're also like a little chubby, so literally my dad, right? And seeing their struggle, like their business struggles, I'm helping them with like starting a business for Clorox in this country or that country. And the problems they have now is the problems I remember now, that my dad was like stressed about XYZ. And I'm having experiences with my dad in a way that I never had. Like, I'm still having experiences. I'm still communicating or understanding my dad, even though he's not here. So Heidegger, taking it back to that idea of the space and the body, time. So Heidegger's book is Being and Time. He applies the same concept to time. Time is like this idea of time as like minutes, hours, days is secondary. Like the primary idea is time is about temporal experiences. It's irrelevant that it's, my dad is gone in time or he was before in time or after. It's secondary. So it's harder idea to grasp and explain, but I don't think death is the end, but not in just a loosey-goosey way, in a concrete way where I get to continue to have experiences.
Yeah. What are some of the books that you would recommend that your therapist recommended for you? What would you recommend as reading for law students and folks, maybe if they're not philosophy majors?
Yeah, no, I saw that question from Emily, so thank you for asking that, Emily. Great question. I have written short reviews on these books on my website too, so feel free to go to it. My website is on my LinkedIn, so you can find it easily. The best beginner's book that I have come across, it's called Reinventing Your Life. And the idea, like, you can just look at a table of contents and you'll see how beautiful it is. It's like common things that people tell themselves, and it tells you how to resolve them. So, why doesn't anyone like me? What's wrong with me? Why can't they stay consistent? Like all these questions and doubts that we have, and then it uses those as entry points to then talk about like big ideas in psychology and science of the brain and therapy to get you to understand where those come from and how to address them. So that's a great beginner's book. It's a sister book to that. It's called Disarming the Narcissist. And it's the same style of therapy, but I recommend Disarming the Narcissist, especially for people who come from a narcissistic family. And I'll explain what that is. But it's very common, especially in the immigrant communities. Typical narcissistic family is a very strong father that's like, I'm this and I'm that, and you follow what I say, which we all associate with narcissism, but also a narcissistic mother, which we know less about. But this is not my terms, this is therapy terms, but the female narcissism is more about victimhood. So the mother that says, I gave up everything so that you can go to school, or like, my whole life, I'll give up all my life for you. It sounds like that statement is about you, but it's really about them. It's, I gave up everything for you. I do everything I do is because of you. It starts with I. So it's a very common thing. Everyone kind of experiences it. But if that explains your problem a little bit better, that book, Disarming the Narcissist, is a better starting point. But both that and Reinventing Your Life are good beginner books. If you're a little bit more advanced, favorite all-time book, I like, it's falling apart. I take notes. I go back to it. It's a living document for me. It's called Mindsight by Dr. Dan Siegel. So Dr. Dan Siegel was a neurosurgeon before he was a therapist. And as he was working more on the brain, he realized a lot of problems are actually better solved without surgery. So then he goes and becomes a therapist. So his book, Mindsight, the first half is just brain, chemistry, physics. So it's like, if you want to ground all this stuff in science, that book is incredible. Like, this is how synapses work and neurons connect to each other. And then the second half of the book connects that to wellness and therapy and emotions. And I'll just use this one visual example that explains it to me so well. So you know when water comes from the top of a mountain or a hill and it splits into different like paths, like it hits a rock and it splits and it goes down, it becomes like a path. And then more water comes, and where does the more water go? It continues on those paths. So same idea with neurons, like if you feel inadequate, if you grew up in a family and your parents are like, yeah, your cousins do better, you should do better. You have those neuron pathways in your mind that are connected and now strong, that feeling of inadequacy, because those neurons have been firing together many, many times. So they're like a strong network now. So anytime someone says something that's slightly close to that feeling of inadequacy, we call them triggers, right? Those neurons just light up, like regardless of whether that thing actually is about inadequacy or not, it's the closest thing to it. So those neurons immediately, they're like a practice group, so they light up.
Interesting.
So the second half of the book teaches you how to literally rewire. And this is why there is no moment where you arrive at nirvana. It's a process. So then next time you get triggered on inadequacy, you take one step forward. You're like, okay, first step is noticing it. Okay, I'm getting triggered. Okay, take deep breaths. And it starts with that step, and then you build on that step. So next time you're like, okay, what can I do instead? And next time it becomes automatic memory of something else. Like instead of the inadequacy, now you're strengthening new confidence neurons. And now next time they fire. So it's just, that book is fantastic.
Very cool, very cool. Well, I know you said that you had like a hard stop at 1, so I want to respect your time, but thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you being here and talking about this difficult topic. There will be a recording, so I'll send it out to everybody when it gets posted. And we have another round of meetups next week, so I look forward to seeing all of you. But thank you so much for your time, Ali, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Reach out. I'm a nerd about these things, so always happy to talk about it.
All right, thanks so much. Bye, everyone.